Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to explore how PorterLogic is reshaping supply chain technology and helping businesses optimize their operations with some customizable solutions. So let's get this one started. Here we go.
I'm going to make him an offer.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros.
Business Bros. Today we have the privilege of speaking with an entrepreneur and technology leader who is at the forefront of supply chain innovation. As the CEO of PorterLogic, a supply chain technology company based in Atlanta, Georgia, he's here to share his insights into revolutionizing the world of logistics and supply chain management. During our conversation, we'll explore his journey from his early fascination with technology to his role in building the PorterLogic platform, which aims to break the mold in the supply chain. So let's get ready to dive into the world of innovative technology and supply chain optimization. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Jonathan Porter. Some buttons there. I hit the wrong one at the very beginning, but now we're ready to rock and roll. Jonathan, thanks for being on the program today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, man, let's start off with the number one question that I always ask. I just want to get straight to the point. Everyone who's on the show here is here to market their business in some way, somehow. There's a product, a service, something they're bringing to the forefront. What is that for you?
Yeah, so we make a supply chain technology software platform that's going to help companies optimize the way they run fulfillment. So most of our customers are value add distributors that are doing both distribution, but also then some form of manufacturing, kitting type process. And so we have a platform that acts as their one-stop technology solution. It's a technology stack is what we call it, and it operates all the various portions of their supply chain. So.
Is that targeted towards I mean, obviously you kind of described the industry there, but is it specific to like online based, or do they have to have a brick and mortar and they're kind of transitioning? Do you have like a revenue amount that you're kind of looking to work with?
Yeah, we target a mid-market customer anywhere from about 50 employees to about 350 employees. We find that number of employees is a better metric than revenue just because products can vary so much. So typically our customers are operating their own facilities. That's one of the major differentiators between us and other platforms. So third-party logistics firms are not typically the customers we go after. We're helping solve really complex issues. So one of our customers is a food kit manufacturer. They bring in raw components, so raw food ingredients, and actually cook and prepare them into finished meal kits that they then ship out to customers. So we're doing all of their warehouse management as well as their procurement and vendor management and getting all of those components to the kitchen at the right time for that to then be prepared. So that's more typical of kind of our customer profile. They're doing a lot of the operations themselves, still in a mid-market range though. So, maybe a couple facilities. This particular customer has 3 facilities on the West Coast, and then they've just recently opened their East Coast facility. So just to give you a kind of sense of size. So.
Yeah. So essentially they're already doing business. They have a lot of deliverables. You're just trying to make it a lot more efficient so that they can get product to customer maybe in a quicker amount of time, maybe track some more what's it called, just in time type inventory type
Sure.
systems, so that they're more efficient, more productive at the end of the day, and that turns into more profitability. So I totally get that. What's your background like? How did you get to just jump into working with some of the most complex features of a business? What's your education like?
Yeah, so I can start by saying that I definitely come from a very entrepreneurial background. My parents have run a residential construction company for 40 years, and even before that, I think my grandfather was a brick mason, and we come from a line of working for ourselves, and so I'd always knew I would do something on my own. I actually in high school had a side business where I was building websites and marketing flyers and things for real estate agents around Atlanta that my parents were connected to. So, but I went off to college and went to Georgia Tech. I studied industrial engineering. I thought it was important to get get an engineering degree just because it's a very problem solving focus. So I thought about computer science. I'm a coder, a technologist. And so I thought about going really heavy into the computer science route, but thought that engineering was a really good place to start. So from there, I went to work for a really large warehouse management software company. So that was really kind of my entry into this, yes, as you mentioned, this complex world, this kind of nuance of how warehouses operate and the different systems required to maintain inventory and manage financials and, all these pieces that if you operate a warehouse, you have to have. So that company was called Manhattan Associates. They're market leader in WMS. I worked there for a couple of years, worked at a startup right out of that. So that's actually where I met my co-founder. So I kind of got the big company experience, but then dove into the startup realm. That was a business intelligence startup. I was doing a lot of data warehouse design and architecture. So just continued to try and learn and try and get, as much experience as I could in the various capacities from big companies, small companies, doing functional consulting roles, but also more data-driven roles. So I would love to say at the time that I was doing all of this 100% intentionally, but it was a lot of just following what I was interested in. I got a little bit burnt out on the consulting and travel space, so I was kind of saying, okay, can I get more on the data side? Can I continue to get more technical? So I went that startup, I went to another very small company where I was doing warehouse management type work as well. So both on the consulting side, but then also on the technology and delivery side, execution side. So yeah, really had 7+ years of experience working with warehouse management systems before I got into this and said, all right, there's got to be a better way. So, I don't have one aha moment, but it was this series of just this was a painful process. It's very expensive and it takes a long time to implement warehouse systems, and really just said, okay, there's got to be a better way. And then started talking to a lot of people in my network who also were sharing similar thoughts. So once I started seeing it, not just me, once other people started kind of sharing that, that's when I really kind of dove in and started building.
It's funny though. I think a lot of people kind of miss that when they want to get into business, especially early on as young entrepreneurs. You don't know what you don't know, and when you get into a space, a lot of the big hiccups that you have is just because you're learning along the way. I like the route that you took, 7 years of kind of on the job training, learning different aspects of what kind of piqued your interest, but at the same time, you kind of knew you were going in a particular direction. People that become engineers kind of see problems in a certain way that is different from the way other people see a problem.
Sure.
That's why the complexity of the problems that you're trying to solve today, I think, make a lot of sense. But either way, it requires that dedication. It requires that kind of focus. It requires the ability for you to kind of mess up and keep going, even though you're going in a direction that you want to go, but sometimes you stumble and fall. If you were going to give advice to young entrepreneurs today or people getting started based on your experience, based on what you've seen in other businesses as you consult with them, what advice would you give to someone getting started today?
Great question. And yeah, I would start by just echoing what you said about having big company experience or having some other experience. I talk to a lot of folks that, want to jump into a startup either right out of school or very earlier in their career. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. We see plenty of success stories of folks doing that. But personally, my experience getting that big company experience, seeing just the way that, the world operates, once you getting out of college and seeing the real world, that really helped me. And I could never be where I am now without that experience. So the other thing that I would say to early folks is you have to, especially at the very beginning, you have to figure out how to get unbiased feedback. So you're going to have an idea and you're going to talk to a lot of people and they're all going to want to say, yeah, that sounds great. Or yeah, of course I'd buy that. Or, you're going to get a lot of false positive. And so there's a book I read early on called The Mom Test. And it's a real short book. It's a quick hit, but it basically, the concept is if you can ask and get real feedback from your own mom, you can get real feedback from anybody. So it kind of walks you through how to ask questions, how to not lead the witness, how to not, just hear what you want to hear. It's the most critical at the very beginning to get that real feedback, because that what you learn in customer discovery, what you learn when you're first starting out, is going to heavily influence what you build. And you don't want to build something and 2 years later, then you find out nobody wants it. You'd much rather figure out early on if there's demand. And so that's where you hear, MVP or minimum viable product. Is there some really quick way that you can validate the demand? You could throw up a fake landing page or just make a YouTube video and see what kind of response you get. But just any way that you can get unbiased feedback from potential customers is really the ideal as well, early in the process, and let that refine your idea, listen to the feedback, try, hone and iterate. It's so much quicker and cheaper to iterate when it's still an idea compared to when you've built something, right? Once you've built something, you have this, tech debt, or even if it's hardware, you have some type of, product that you then have to change and iterate on. So yeah, iterate quickly at the beginning.
Yeah, getting the proper feedback is important. Somebody's got to tell you your baby's ugly before you
Yeah,
go and raise that kid, right? So
absolutely.
at the end of the day, the biggest mistake I think entrepreneurs have is they run out of cash. They either get overwhelmed with the amount of work it actually takes to run the thing, or they're not properly gauging their cash flow and they run out of money and then the business fails. One of those two things is usually the reason why 9 out of 10 businesses fail at the beginning. And those are just mistakes, right? Mistakes that we
Sure.
make. We got to take a big slice of humble pie sometimes and scrape off the dirt and keep going forward. What are some of the big mistakes you feel you've made that taught you something, that pointed you in the direction that you should be going, and kind of set you straight a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think that entrepreneurship is a series of mistakes, and the bigger thing is how do you correct and how do you get up? I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? Being able to be told no, or being able to stumble and get up and make the best of it, I think is key to starting a company and running a business. I think that honestly, actually going to the customer discovery. So one of the things that we've recently found, when I was initially talking to customers, this was 3 or 4 years ago at this point. I talked to a lot of other consultants that were in my network, and I think that there was some inherent bias built into my feedback because I was talking to other technology people. I was not talking directly to my end customer, which is going to be a supply chain organization, a VP of operations or a VP of supply chain, somebody like that. So we've had to go through a lot of learning around how do we talk to that end customer. As I mentioned, I'm a coder, so I talk at a technical level, and having to change that into or adapt that to talk to KPIs and metrics and ROI, things that decision makers care about. That's been the biggest journey. I was very much the naive engineer that was like, oh, I'll build it, they'll come, it'll be easy, and you quickly realize that's not the case. So yeah, you mentioned financing too. That was another component of my background that I didn't mention. But when I first left my last full-time job, this would have been in 2019. I started doing contract software development. So I started just coding for other clients, and that flexibility of being able to pay bills, but then also being able to take a 3 p.m. coffee to, go talk to somebody like that I think was key. And, it's not that everybody can necessarily, go out and code for clients, but if you can figure out some way to have flexibility at that beginning stage, it just makes it so much easier. Because if you're only able to work on a business, evenings and weekends, it's just inherently a constraint. So that's another piece that I kind of offer to folks.
Yeah, and I think the offering, like Alex Hormozy says, whatever it is that you're doing in business, you need to have an offer that is so good people will feel dumb saying no to.
Mm,
And as a consultant, it's kind of tough sometimes to be able to distinguish yourself amongst your competition. I
mm.
mean, there's a lot of people in your space. Some are good, some are not so good, but there's a lot of people in your space, and there's a reason why they're coming to PorterLogic. What do you feel that reason is? What's the thing that you feel you do best that people are like, these are the guys you need to go see?
Yeah, so one of the things is that we're very real, I'd say. We run into, especially in the supply chain world, there are a lot of people that are over promising and under delivering. And we try and be the exact opposite. We try to under promise, but then over deliver. And I know that sounds so simple, and it's obviously a lot harder to execute, but really, being realistic with things like timelines and scope, and just, actually talking to customers up front about this is what you're, what it's really going to take. I think that we often then also run into, okay, it's an uphill battle fighting some of the sales folks from, competitors, because they're going to promise the world. And so we have to definitely fight that. But no, I mean, I'd say that one of the things that we do really well is this value add process. This, whether it's a company that does kitting, or whether it's a company that, is doing cooking of food and preparing it and shipping it, there's traditional silos that you have a warehouse system and then you have a production system. And part of what our platform does is kind of put those together, so you really can run your entire supply chain operation, even down to the nuance and the complexity. So the entire system is highly flexible. We're able to configure it very specifically to how a customer needs to operate. So you're not having to export data into a spreadsheet and make a bunch of changes and then re-upload it and then have somebody, write a sticky note to remember that this particular item needs to get packed in this way. Like, we eliminate a lot of that just extra manual process and risk and errors that gets taken out of the equation with our platform as well. So that combination, whether companies that are doing things in a unique way, doing some type of kitting or value add process, that then need to have a system that fits better than just your out of the box WMS.
I always love stories that kind of convey a message, because oftentimes, like you said, you might be talking at a technical level and people will get lost. They're done with it, right? And you've already shared with us the meal prep one. Can you tell us a story like from beginning to maybe beginning to end, right? A customer is struggling with some of these things that they maybe know or don't know that you can improve upon and make their company more efficient. And then in the end, this is where they're at today, because stories sell, man. Facts tell, but stories sell.
Sure, 100%. So yeah, one of our other use cases is around inventory management and knowing how much inventory you have across your whole network. So say that you're shipping and you have one of your own warehouses, but then you use multiple other third-party companies to do fulfillment. So you have 4 or 5 different places that your inventory is sitting. Current state, you may have a massive spreadsheet where you're manually collecting all of that data because you need to be able to see how much you have across the network. You need to know that I have, 2 pallets of this product in Chicago and I have 4 pallets in California. So you need that view across your network. But when it's all siloed systems, your current state may be that you're getting an email from 2 of your 3PLs, and maybe you get a Power BI dashboard that you have to log into and export from a second one. And you may have a legacy homegrown system that you're having to extract data from manually as well. So all of that is what we smooth over. And we've done this for multiple customers, where we automatically collect all of that data, whether it's from an old legacy system or whether it's from a new system. Part of our platform can connect and pull data from just about anything and then transform it and put it into a single view where you can just log into a dashboard and say, hey, here's how much inventory I have. You can build in alerts and KPIs, and you can really tailor it to whatever your particular needs are. You may have a just-in-time model where you're shipping lots of purchase orders in and having to turn over inventory quickly. So you may need to have a dashboard that's tailored to inventory turns and whatever your particular metrics are. So whether you're operating multiple facilities that are all your own, or whether you're operating other some 3PLs within your network, that's a lot of where our platform can plug in and help.
With the emergence of AI, I feel like we're leaving a wild west of technology where everybody kind of developed their own. They have some legacy platforms here and there. You go to this website, you log in, you download your spreadsheet over here. I feel like the age today that we're living in is almost exactly what you're doing here, which is saying, look, I know it's confusing. This guy speaks this language, this guy speaks this language, but we're going to bring it all together into one spot so you can easily see what stuff's going on without losing the connection to those old platforms. Because at the end of the day, you can't change all the other people. You can take in the data and kind of change it for yourself. But over time, I mean, it's hard to get into some of those distributors and make the changes on that level. But you're making those efficiencies that much better for a lot of these companies. And that's the key, I think, in the successful businesses. They do something really well, and then they look for something to improve upon or something to make more efficient for their customers. What do you think that is for you guys? Like I'm sure you're doing something really, really well, and then you're always in the side of your mind, because every entrepreneur does that, right? They're like, ooh, if I could do this would be so much better for.
I think the video cut out there for a second, but I'm back now. So I think the question was about what are we doing? What do we want to do in the future? Like, what are we doing down the road? Yeah.
What are you doing to make yourself a little more efficient or a little bit better for your clients?
Yeah, we are constantly iterating on our platform. So, I mean, we are very much a product company and continually push out updates to the product itself, and really we actively solicit feedback from our customers on, okay, how are you using our product? Like, how can we make it better? And we have very open dialogue with a lot of the customers that we're working with. We really see our product as the equivalent of an ERP system is to finance. So the acronym or the analogy we sometimes use is your ERP is to your finance and accounting team, as your supply chain tech stack is to your supply chain operations. So what we really want is the entire component of whatever you're supply chain is doing, whether it's warehouse, whether it's procurement, whether it's order management, returns. Our product can do all of that. Now, having said that, we focus in on some really specific use cases right now, especially just where the company is at. There's a couple real key things that we're solving for customers, despite having this larger vision of doing everything down the road. Things like kitting is one of the main things that we're helping customers with. We get into some use cases around inventory reconciliation and some of your month-end processes. We get into some vendor management, vendor scorecarding, vendor portal type use cases. So there's some real specifics that we've really just heard from customers. That's kind of what's driven a lot of that. Is we have this very, very flexible platform, but feedback from customers said, here's the kind of top 3 ways that we want to use it. So we've now pushed that out more into the forefront, and that's how we're selling it. But then we also tell the customer the story of, hey, we can do all these things. Let us prove that we can do it with this one pointed use case, but this is a single platform that you can run your entire supply chain in. So
I got a marketing question for you, because
sure.
I'm pretty good at this business to consumer thing, right? That's done pretty well for me. The business to business, especially when you get into tight niches like yours, that marketing's got to be a little tough. How are you acquiring customers? How are you talking to the right people that make these decisions for their company?
Yeah, that is a definite challenge, I'll say, just because, yes, you're exactly right. It's a very specific person that we're trying to get to. Typically, a supply chain operator is also not going to want to get sold to. I mean, it's just the classic that they don't want to hear it. They are fighting fires and have a million things to deal with. So trade shows are a big piece of our marketing plan and just our marketing strategy in general. So that's the nature of this industry. It was kind of something we learned early on, is there's a lot of trade shows in the supply chain, technology, retail, 3PL space. There's just a proliferation of them. So I think that my co-founder went to something like 20 trade shows this year. So a huge amount of just, networking and meeting people. Even though we're selling business software, you are still selling to a person. And that person, especially when they're buying early stage software, is somewhat putting their reputation on the line. So they really want a personal connection, despite, yes, the challenge of getting to that person. They still want to see a face and know that you're real and know that, you can actually deliver and, who to call when something goes wrong. So yeah, building relationships and networking through trade shows, and really even more broadly, just events and conferences. And, there's one here we're based in Atlanta, and there's one called the Georgia Logistics Summit. It's a 500 person 1-day event. It's held somewhere in the state of Georgia every year. And it's just a collection of transportation and warehousing folks from the state. So we do a lot of that. We do some of your more traditional outbound selling techniques as well. So things like LinkedIn messages, emails, Google ads. We experiment with a lot of different things. So Google ads in particular is a great keyword kind of data engine almost. We don't use it specifically for a lot of inbound leads. We actually have a fairly outbound motion, but you're able to just try things very quickly and get feedback on, is this a keyword or is this a combination that elicits some clicks? That's one of the biggest things I'd say that's different between B2C and business, is that getting feedback on if something works, specifically in marketing and messaging, that can take a lot longer than it can in the B2C world. B2C, I know that I'm obviously, glorifying, but throw up an Instagram ad with some, new messaging, and just, in an hour, you can see whether people are, responding to it or not. You can't quite do the same in business to business. So what we do instead is use Google ads for that same kind of thing. Throw up a new keyword, or we'll come up with some new value prop or some new thing. And then one of the first things we do is we put it into a Google ad just to see, does that make anybody click or get excited? And then if so, then we start targeting that. So then we start using, LinkedIn or some of the other tools that we use to say, okay, here's, something that people say they care about, and go out and find those folks, and then message them, try and really talk to them. It's not just a form message. It's very personalized. We actually have people writing all of our outbound. So it's not just this, machine that's, hitting a million people. Kind of back to the, we're trying to be real. That's one of the differentiators. As simple as that sounds, actually having a person send a message that's not just a, horrible spammy email, that can make a difference. So
I think it does. You definitely got to build that relationship in your line of work, because you're right. The trust factor is in. I'm laying my reputation on the line if I'm bringing you on board. We got to get to know each other. You got to take me on a first date, dude. You can't just take me home right away. It doesn't work that way.
exactly.
All right, Jonathan, if people want to reach out, man, they want to find out more about what you're doing, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I love talking about supply chain and technology. So yeah, hit me up and we can talk about code. We can talk about warehouse, anything there. So porterlogic.com is a great place to find out more information about our product and our platform. You can schedule a demo. You can see a lot of more information about what the platform can do. So, but yeah, no, I love talking about this kind of stuff. So appreciate the platform.
Of course, man. Of course. All right, ladies and gentlemen, porterlogic.com. I mean, you heard it on today's episode. It's complex. It's one of those things where your business just might need help if you are in that logistical space and you're like, dude, what do I do here? How do I make this better, more efficient? You're going to want to talk to some of the professionals in that space. So make sure you reach out to Jonathan. You can find him on his LinkedIn at Jonathan Porter, or you can go to porterlogic.com and find out more. Jonathan, thank you very much for being on the program today, man. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace. And we're
Appreciate
out.
it.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz to get started today.